We got a professional demographer in the room? No, I didn't think so. Never been one yet somehow. I know these guys exist because I see their books, but I've never encountered one, and I'm not one either. So now I've got two very plausible arguments put forth by acknowledged experts. They got numbers 12 million and 18 and a half, what to do. I don't have confidence to do this, but I do have a role model, and it's that great scientific edifice, the Smithsonian Institution. I'm just going to split the difference. Okay, so the most accurate number I can come up with, following the Smithsonian's lead, is about 15 million Indians. In 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. About 15 million Indians. Or maybe 18 million Indians. Or maybe only 12. But certainly nothing like 1 or 2 or 3. Okay? And any way you want to slice it, in the 1890 census in the United States, there's 237,000 survivors. So you can kind of see why they wanted to keep that initial number kind of low. Minimizes the whole thing. Only 75% of them were missing. That's 750,000 people. You can account for that over a couple centuries of all kinds of benign explanations. But now when you start talking 12 or 15 or 18, it doesn't matter which one you're using, you're getting into the upper 90th percentile in population loss. The magnitude in terms of numbers that cannot so easily be accounted for. And you have to actually start to revise your explanations of where they all went. And you can't do that by saying, well, some white guy unknowingly sneezed and killed off 3 million people. How many times did they unknowingly introduce smallpox on blankets, do you suppose? Inadvertently, accidentally. I mean, my God, they go completely off the chart linguistically trying to deny this. I actually came across that. It was inadvertently, accidentally introduced. Inadvertently, accidentally, mistakenly, and not on purpose introduced. We didn't mean it. We didn't mean it. We're innocent, blameless. But it was the Indians' fault. They didn't have acquired immunity to pathogens they'd never experienced. It was defects in the Indians that caused all this to happen. Well, we're fairly close to that on some eugenics arguments, actually. But that's a centerpiece of denial. And responsible scholars to this day put quotes around that. It's like they use it as a noun. Responsible is self-explanatory. If you're going to be a responsible scholar, what is it exactly you're responsible to? If you're irresponsible, what is it you're irresponsible with regard to? Well, the word's the last one on the bottom line on the board. That's the standard. No matter how obviously false it might be. Responsible scholars won't acknowledge more than 3 to 5 million still. You've already radically changed the ability of the standard interpretations of what happened to everybody at that point, but the reality is far worse than that. But having successfully foisted off this minimization, they're then in position to shift over through interpretations. Well, we don't know how many Indians there were, but we do know that 3/4 of them died of disease. If you don't know how many there were, how can you possibly know? Tell me what proportion died of what? That's absolutely illogical loop you just went through, but that's standard interpretation. That's debatable, but we know what percentage of them died of disease. As if that in itself made it somehow benign. Half the people that died in the Holocaust died of typhus and other endemic diseases. And in Nuremberg, the people who presided over them were held just as culpable for those deaths, and rightly so, as those who were shot, gassed, and beaten and burned and all the rest of it. Why? Because they had them sealed in ghettos. They had them absolutely dependent, dislocated, stressed out, traumatized, denied food, denied medical attention, denied heat for, under those conditions they died like flies. something natural about being placed in that debilitating condition, which is, after all, the history of the conquest, isn't it? The Indians that weren't killed outright in the engagement were scattered to the winds, dislocated, removed, relocated, denied their traditional economy, denied a replacement offing, denied housing, debilitated, stressed out, loss of relatives, loss of land, loss of tradition, loss of the familiar, not knowing what their destiny is going to be. In those conditions, you get a common cold, you're dead. And you don't have to be an Indian for that to happen. True, there was no immunity to things like smallpox. The smallpox was deliberately introduced, not just once, but repeatedly, but the overall condition was such that disease impact would be catastrophic. This was not accidental. There are people to blame. There is a cultural matrix to blame. There's a way of viewing relations between people to blame. There is a whole rethinking of the nature of the interaction between native and settler. In the alternative, see, this is maiming to both sides. When the genocide is denied, you increase the possibility of perpetuation into the future. Okay? When you deny, demean, and degrade, invariably, those in the victim end, both by denying their suffering, but also holding them accountable to the natural and inevitable consequences of what it is that's been done to them, but you also, in the process of misunderstanding them, because relations are always a two-way street, you profoundly misunderstand yourself. And so you hear absolute insanity coming out of the television set on September 11th, 2001, before the buildings even come down, where all three cable feeds are pronouncing in unison, almost like a chant, innocent Americans, innocent Americans, innocent. We didn't even know who was in the buildings. How do you know they're innocent? By definition, they're innocent. How do we know they're innocent? Because they're American. Well, why does that make them innocent? Because whatever America did couldn't be what it seems, because after all, it's American. It's called American exceptionalism, and Canada works exactly the same way. Perpetrators stop being perpetrators by taking into account the nature of the perpetration and ending the behavior, and ending the set of relations that ensue as a result of a genocide. Nobody in here, I would suspect, nobody in this institution, probably not in this city, except for some absolute lunatics, would choose to be the beneficiary of the perpetration of genocide, particularly when the genocide is ongoing. But in order to be what you don't want to be, all you have to do is sit here and let them pound into you. You're innocent by virtue of birth. On the other hand, if you want to be what it is that you want to be, you have to actually suck it up and alter the nature of the outcome of the process. Change the process. You cannot undo the past, but you have a proactive responsibility to alter the outcome so that the victims do not continue to be victimized and the perpetrating society end up with the beneficiary. Okay. This understanding is maiming to the concept of all concerned. All concerned. It's to everyone's benefit in terms of sense of self to correct the situation, and the correction of the situation has to begin with cognition of the actuality of what the circumstance is and what it was that produced it. There is no alternative to that. The orthodoxy that would mask and disguise and cause celebration to occur on the basis of something that is the opposite of the true historical reality is the enemy. You can think your way through it, you can see your way through it, but you need to act your way through it, or they're going to continue to impose it upon generations to come with absolute damage, carnage, if you will, psychologically and otherwise to coming generations. And I think we have not only the right, but the obligation to assist the destiny of our coming generations, whether it's our children or our children's children or 7 generations out into the future, that they're deserving of better than that. We have the obligation to bequeath to them truth and clarity that allows for an alteration of relations out of the present genocidal reality to create the opposite of that 7 generations into the future. I know that's true for Native people, but I think it's probably true for all people. And on that basis of truth, we can probably bond, join hands, have a common project, and alter the future in a positive way. I'm done talking now. Thanks for listening.